Let's get to it and welcome in Kevin Sawyer, who we're missing on the broadcast these days. 2 down, 2 to go in the first round, taking care of business at home in 2. I mean, really just incredible playoff games, Kevin. I mean, what have you thought about the games overall before we dive into the players that have been making a difference? I mean, this has been some great playoff hockey.
I'm going to compare it to broadcasting. I've been talking about hockey, for my whole life, and it's easy. It's second nature. And then when you get in front of a camera, the lights turn on, and all of a sudden there's pressure. People are watching, and all of a sudden it becomes very difficult to articulate yourself like you used to do for years prior. It's the same for the playoffs and same for the team win the President's Trophy. Not to say that there isn't pressure, expectation, and a spotlight during the regular season, but that light doesn't burn anywhere near as hot as it does in the playoffs. And I would say out of all the 16 teams in the playoffs, that light was brighter and hotter on the Winnipeg Jets more than any other team. The first round, pressure, Hellebuyck, the way things went last year, there was pressure. So they won a game where they played well for 20 minutes. We all know that. And what we saw last night was the Winnipeg Jets settling into what's normal for them, right? That 82-game dress rehearsal. I see them only getting better from here as they settle down and start to get a little bit more comfortable with that burning light that's on them. They're the best team. With that comes expectation, and for me, they're dealing with it better and better with every day that goes by.
I'm really with you on that, and I have to admit, I mean, someone was asking me on a show I was going on. I mean, who's got the most pressure to win the cup? And I mean, winning the cup is a 2-month journey. There's a lot of great teams. Only one team is going to be the last one standing. And listen, the odds were so even. You had 10 teams basically in between 7 and 10 to 1. So pick a team. You could make an argument that they're the favorite. But I certainly believe that the pressure to come out with a strong start, to win the first round of the playoffs was as great as it was here in Winnipeg that it was anywhere in the league because of what's happened the last couple years, the scar tissue that the players know. And I would argue that Connor Hellebuyck, of all the players, to be honest, somewhat unfairly, in my opinion, but still, that was all the narrative. Can he get it done in the playoffs as well? And Kev, to win the first game in a game that 3 of the first 10 shots went in, and then to have them completely dominate the third period the way they did was, in some ways, maybe the best case scenario for this team.
I totally agree. I mean, they could have folded, right? The way that started with Connor Hellebuyck, and did they feel the pressure? You bet they did. Of course they did. But the ability to rebound when things don't go well, and you're right. I would say no team has more pressure. And think of it this way: where spotlight's on the Winnipeg Jets, the heat is on. Oh boy, are they going to lose game 1 to St. Louis? Here we go again. They don't lose; they win it. They didn't do it in pretty or in high fashion. But if they get through this first round, which, anything's possible, but they're going to, it sure looks that way, their biggest pressure moment could be behind them as far as expectation. Is everybody expecting them to win a Stanley Cup? I don't think that's fair. I think they're hoping. I think some people are expecting, but man, when you get a team that has to push through that kind of pressure early, now you catch your flow and you get some momentum and some real confidence as you go. This team is going to be dangerous. They pass these mental tests, and that's what winning a Stanley Cup is. It's physical, but it's more mental than anything else. Ask anybody that's won a cup, and they'll tell you the same thing. So the mental tests have been checked so far.
Kev, I have to say, I've been really impressed with the St. Louis Blues in this series. I mean, nothing's coming easy for Winnipeg. Both teams are playing an incredibly physical brand of hockey. The Blues have played really well. They've been in both of these games, and they're going back home down 0-2. How do you think the Blues are feeling right now?
Well, for sure down. I think that they would say that, man, we played good enough to split on the road, and that first game would have hurt for sure. But at the same time, Jim Montgomery knows that, man, that we're not far off. I mean, we're playing the President's Trophy winning team, and we have to be near perfect to beat them. Listen, their game plan is a good one where, I mean, the forechecking and getting speed through the neutral zone. I don't see a team that's trying to be overly fancy, and they're forcing Winnipeg to be their very best. And their Jets are being pushed to stay tight into their structure. And that's a good thing. If they can get out of this round, when they get out of this round, they're going to be battle tested. It's certainly not going to be an easy one. I was asked, what's going to be the hardest matchup between Minnesota Calgary and St. Louis Blues potentially a lot. And a lot of people thought, if Calgary gets in, that's going to be a nightmare. This is the most difficult of those three teams because St. Louis has a ton of structure. They play hard, they come hard, and that forces Winnipeg to stay tight. When they're not, game one, just those first 40 minutes, the reason that the St. Louis Blues was able to have more than 50 finished checks, and a lot of them were hard, because the Jets weren't tight in the neutral zone. They didn't have a good gap and hold that rush from St. Louis. They were able to get through the neutral zone and they were able to pound them. And so that forced Winnipeg to go back and say, hey, we can't take shortcuts here. We got to be tight. They tightened up, and now they out-hit St. Louis last game. So it's a tough matchup, but I think that St. Louis, the long way to get to your question is, they've got to be down, but ultra motivated going home saying we're one goal away from getting a win in this series.
There's so many different players to kind of bring up, but I want to start with Mark Scheifele. He all season long, he has been, listen, he's had a career year. He's sort of played like, in a lot of ways, a different player. A player that has just matured, graduated, and is absolutely solely focused on doing what he can do to put his team in the best position to win. Thoughts on Scheifele's first two games, the way he's handled the very physical nature of this, and be able to create, make plays, score goals, and of course that being the catalyst on that winning goal in a series where offense is very tough to come by.
I am of the opinion that the most important player for the Winnipeg Jets to win a Stanley Cup is Mark Scheifele. A lot of people say it's got to be Connor Hellebuyck. Of course he's going to be important. But if your top line center isn't one of the best players, if not your driver, not very many teams are going very far, particularly Winnipeg. They need that line to score, and the way to score in the playoffs is exactly what Mark is doing right now. Now, I'm not going to suggest that Scheifele has flipped the switch, turned it on, turned it off through the regular season, but I can tell you, it is impossible to play 82 games at a playoff level. Just no man can endure that. It's impossible. So, but when you look back, and we've talked about this on the show, where, those 10, 12 games this year that were those big moment games against Florida and the back-to-back, the first game against Colorado, Scheifele was the driver. He was the alpha in all of those games, and they won them all. And so he's flipped the switch here, or he's found another level, and it's going to require that, 16 times, 24 times, however many games it takes for this team to win. He knows what it takes to score and to lead a team in the playoffs, and being courageous and fearless and going to the net with his skill, man, that pulls everybody into the fight. I've been so impressed with just the way he's been able to win pucks on the wall, be willing to take his toes to the blue paint. Every shift, he's driving, and that is exactly what this team needs if they want to win.
Well, and when we look at the winning goal, Scheifele is the one that sort of starts it, draws the attention, gets it to Cole Perfetti, who then puts it on Kyle Connor's stick. And you think about just how rough this series has been and the physical toll that it's taking. I got to say, some of the guys that aren't the most physical players, if you will, Kyle and Cole, they are not backing down from anything and are still being as effective as they would be in no-hitters in the regular season. I've really been impressed at the way they've handled it, moved out of the way of big hits, taken one when they needed to. Basically, it all comes down to paying the price, and it seems like everyone's doing it, led by the top offensive players.
Remember the game earlier in March, whatever the date was, when the Capitals were in town with Winnipeg?
Oh, of course.
It was a
25th.
Yeah, there you go. So it was a 1-goal lead going into the third period. And we talked about this as well, where Tom Wilson, Pierre-Luc Dubois, everybody for the Washington Capitals was ramming the Jets through the end boards, a lot like St. Louis is trying to do in this game. And they passed that test by picking it back to them at the right times, not taking bad penalties, but most importantly, not going away, not fading away. As a matter of fact, the physicality in that game made Cole Perfetti, it made Vlad Nemesnikov, it made Mark Scheifele better. And that is when I thought to myself, okay, this is probably the final kind of convincing test that I needed personally as an analyst to say, team's ready to win. They're ready to win because they can handle that kind of ferociousness. It's not the first time, so I'm not surprised to see it. We've seen it, against the LA Kings. We've seen it against Dallas. That Capitals game was the one where I'm like, no team's coming harder than that. That was a big boy game. St. Louis is bringing big boy hockey as well and making those guys better. They're not big. They're not meant to be physical, but they can play in big physical games in their own way. It's been more the same for me.
You mentioned big boy hockey. The biggest boy on the Winnipeg Jets had a big game last night. Thoughts on the impact that Logan Stanley was able to make when he was out there last night? And I mean, they hit on Kyrou that I think, could be a moment in this series that we look back at as being a pretty pivotal turning point.
I'm going to back up, and I know how much heat that Stan has taken over the years.
For sure.
And this year, a ton of it. And listen, I'm not going to say that I stand corrected because, I hope and I'd like to think that you call what you see and you try to be fair. And when you're critical, you better be damn sure you're right. Stan has had some good games throughout the course of the year, and he's had some poor games throughout the course of the year. I give so much credit to Scott Arniel and his coaching staff, Kevin Sawyer, for sticking with this man for as long as they did. I don't think many coaches would have. If I'm in the situation as the coach saying, this, our window is open now, would I have been that patient with him? I doubt it. I've always talked about how popular he is, how hard he works. I think how badly he wants to be good. And they are now getting dividends from the big man. That is exactly what he needs to look like if he wants to take those minutes from somebody else. And that is exactly what the Winnipeg Jets, I think, were holding out for. Make the right play, nothing fancy. In the offensive zone, shoot the puck, find a way to get it to the net, put it somewhere safe. And when you have a chance to be impactful and mean, make sure you never let that opportunity go by. He isn't letting those go by now, and that changes. I'm telling you, man, when I used to play and there was a 6'7" guy on the other side of the ice that's 230, 40, 50 pounds, and they're playing angry, I'm like, God, this is going to be the longest night of my year. And nobody wants that. The St. Louis Blues don't want that, but they're getting it, and they're going to keep getting it. I think Logan Stanley is playing with more confidence now, but it's a quiet confidence. He's not running around chasing the game. Man, what an impact. And good for Winnipeg. Good for them for sticking around and being patient with him. They're getting patient.
I'm with you. I mean, listen, Stanley has been a frustrating player at times because you know that it's there, and just sometimes that physicality wasn't on display and wasn't used enough. And I mean, it's great to be 6'7", but if you're not using it, how are you helping the team win? He did it last night, but I do think, I don't know, maybe I'll just ask you, how much has he benefited from having Luke Schenn around? Because Schenn hits everything. He never lets up on any opportunity to hit someone. And I mean, I don't know, maybe this is a little simplistic, but it seems like the exposure to a guy like that uses the most of his size on every single shift is rubbing off a little bit. Something's working, because what he did to Kyrou last night was Buff-esque. And I got to think, Kevin, that Luke Schenn has had a very, very good effect on Logan Stanley.
There is no doubt. So I'll tell you a story. When I was 20 years old, just up the road from where I'm sitting right now, Ray Ferraro moved into town, and he was in the prime of his career. He knocked on my door and said, "You want to work out with me? I got a gym on my property." At that time, I was one of the hardest working guys on my team in junior. I just turned pro. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. Hustler, I learned so much just from being around Ray and how hard he worked, the expectation he had on himself, and watching him sell out in the gym every single day. I had no choice but to find another level for myself. It's impossible for anybody to have any kind of pride to look right beside you and see like this guy or gal or whatever your situation you're in is selling out and then some. It automatically makes you better just by osmosis, just by being there. And so that's happening with Logan Stanley, in my opinion, with Luke Schenn. Luke blocks shots, hits, and he never chases the game, but he is out there doing heavy lifting. And I think automatically Stan looks over and says, if he can push himself that hard and he can play that brave, so can I. I can find another way to find another level. And that's what Ray did for me. I think without Ray Ferraro, I would have never made it to the NHL just on work ethic alone, being able to be a witness to that. I think maybe not to that level for Stanley, but I think that elevates his game. I also think that for Stan to be as good as he's been lately, he has to learn to trust himself, but also you have to be able to trust the people you're playing with. I think he automatically trusts Luke. He knows exactly who he's playing with. He knows exactly that he's going to be covering for me when I step up on a big hit in the neutral zone. This is a big brother syndrome happening right now, and it is perfect for Logan Stanley. Luke has a lot. I think he has a lot to do with what we're seeing in that pairing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, listen, positive. I mean, we are talking about the third pairing, and Logan Stanley is the sixth defenseman, but you want to be a championship team, you need contributions, positive contributions from every guy in the lineup. And I mean, I think you could go top to bottom for the Winnipeg Jets, and they did exactly that. Now, with the lead, Stan only played a couple minutes in the third period, and that's fine. And that will be the case moving forward. But when you've got that from your third pairing, that puts you in a chance to, well, I mean, listen, they really did do the better job of owning the blue ice. And those guys, when they were out there, were clearing it out in front and getting it out of their zone. But thoughts on the top four, because I know there's a lot of love for what Samberg has done. And, yeah, he did get burned in game number one by Kyrou. Maybe the most important moment in the series so far, the save that Hellebuyck made on Kyrou. I'm not sure we're having the same conversation yesterday if it's 4-2 at that point and what goes on. But, I thought Neil Pionk has had a great amount of fight in his game. And you know what you're getting from Josh Morrissey every night, along with Dylan DeMello. How have you, in your thought, the top four who were playing so many minutes, handled the physicality of what St. Louis is bringing and help get the puck out of their zone and into the hands of the Connors and Scheifeles that have made the difference?
First, let's start with Neil. I thought that he was maybe the best defenseman for Winnipeg last night. All in all, 200 feet, man. His reads, his gap, his stick, the way he was able to end plays, break plays up, transition the puck. And he's only going to get better as well, where he gets more reps, right? Like, that was a long time that he was out of the lineup. So he was great. But that you look at the top four, it's not a big group aside from Dylan Samberg. How they handled the physicality, they've handled it by committee where they know, and I'm sure they talk about this, where the forwards have to carry a ton of load to make sure that those guys are not getting rammed through the end wall. Game one, they did for 40 minutes. That's not sustainable. But when they can get back to pucks as quickly as they can, when the forwards can run interference and smother and suffocate through the neutral zone, it's the same as we've seen all year, where that's that relationship from forward to D. But the top four, who cares if Logan Stanley plays 10 minutes in the game and 2 minutes in the third period? That's all that's what you need him for. That's what you get. And that's all right, because Josh Morrissey, Dylan DeMello, those top four are used to playing 20, 22, 24 minutes. In Josh's case, 28 or 30 if needed. With the style that they played in game number two, that's a team, that's a core that to me can go deep and could avoid injury and can play heavy minutes because of the relationship they have with, the forwards and the D, like I just said.
I don't think Connor Hellebuyck needed to bounce back, if you will, but certainly from the early point of game one, that big save, and then the team took care of the rest in the third period. I thought that he was real good last night. And listen, it is funny, Kevin, and this kind of goes into some of the MVP conversation. You could make an argument that Hellebuyck's importance to the team in some other years was greater because of what was happening in front of him. But when things are going well, they make it easier for Hellebuyck to put up Hellebuyck numbers. And then he returns the favor by being steady as he always is last night. Trending in the right direction for playoff Helly.
Totally. I would actually say, he needed a bounce back, and he got a nice little taste in the third period in game one, but let's be honest, they didn't really need him. They controlled play. So, I'll say, I think he needed to bounce back from game one and, shed doubt for himself about, hey man, last year, the way we wanted it to, that wasn't anything close to what I need to be like. But that's the problem. And that's why I don't beat the MVP drum too heavy. Hustler is, do I think that he's MVP worthy? I do. But is he a slam dunk? He's not for me. And it's only because of the moving parts in front of him. Like you just said, I mean, this team gives him predictability. He has a great sense of anticipation where he fronts shots and he has a chance he peeks into the future and he makes what other goaltenders might have a difficult time getting in front of. He's there ahead of the play a lot of the times, but he's MVP caliber. There's no doubt he deserves it. He's worthy. But if he doesn't get it, we'll, in my opinion, all know why. And it would be because his damn team in front of him was too good. Made it too easy on him too often.